Mike Martinez, isn't that a hard thing to do, to think regionally when you are elected by the people of Austin to take care of Austin's transportation issues, but thinking regionally that might not mix with your interest politically, perhaps?
Well, it's difficult from the standpoint of, you know, I'm elected to represent the city of Austin, and so even as we talk and think critically from a regional perspective, the decisions I make can't necessarily be applied outside the city limits of Austin. So we have to work cooperatively with our partnering governments. But when we talk about growth and specific to traffic congestion, we have to not only talk about regional government, we've got to talk about regional growth. So if we were to expand commuter rail to outlying communities, maybe some of the 750 to 1 million people that are going to move here over the next 20 years could truly use Manor and Elgin and Taylor as options, because they would have that transportation infrastructure to be able to come into Austin on a daily commute and work. And so we have to talk about growth from a regional perspective as well, not just government.
John?
One thing I might go back to is, and I think it relates to all of this, is things like the I-35 corridor. I mean, I-35, you can make some changes around the edges there, but you're never going to, I mean, we should just dispel the notion that we will eliminate congestion on I-35. That won't happen in our lifetime. But what you can do is something like a managed lane, and what a managed lane does, it has a variable toll on it. So as it becomes more congested, they raise the toll, fewer people go on, and then as the number of cars go down, they lower the toll, bring more people on. So you would at least have one lane that would always have at least 50 mile an hour on it, even during peak hours. So that, and then of course it also generates revenue. Another thing is something like the Lone Star Rail project that runs from Georgetown down to San Antonio. That is, you know, north-south corridor that, you know, although it runs through Mopac, you know, it's a major north-south corridor that you can do a lot with. And then any time that you can put added transit onto a given lane of traffic, you're getting more mobility from that lane than you would if you just fill it with single occupancy cars. I think those are the things we're going to have to try and do to deal with the growth and the congestion it brings.
What about this idea of flipping 35 and Texas 130? Where is that? It's been out there.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, so what that would, truthfully, you can't toll a lane on an interstate today, and I know John and them could talk about it. So what you would do, in essence, is make State Highway 130 Interstate 35 as an option, and that would basically just allow you to put a managed lane on 35. But
it is an idea that has been around for a few months now. It's been talked about by a group that was put together by the Department of Local and Statewide Advocates of Transportation along the 35 corridor. And I think it's an idea that deserves additional conversation and consideration. There are certainly challenges associated with it because of the current federal and state laws associated with tolling lanes on an interstate. And in essence, you would have to take the existing State Highway 130 route, which is a toll road, convert it to a non-toll facility, and then switch the toll traffic to some extent to Interstate 35. There are also the financial realities, and we haven't talked about that yet tonight, but financing these projects, whether they're rail or transit or highway improvements or a mix of all of those, which quite frankly is the solution to a lot of our challenges, has to be considered. And for the State Highway 130 project in particular, there is a significant amount of bonds that were sold to build that project that have not yet been paid off. And to do that switch would require significant financial investment to defease those bonds.
John, just to follow up on that, you know, just thinking of the, you know, I don't know, is it $1 billion? I mean, it's probably $1 billion to pay off the bonds on 130. But knowing the cost of construction, I mean, it seems like $1 billion, it's a big number. However, what we would alleviate by gaining 4 lanes on 130 and no construction. I mean, it's basically a financial transaction. It seems like it's certainly one worth pursuing.
Right. I think we would all agree, and that's where the CAMPO, the Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the communities that are associated with that, Williamson County, Travis County, and the surrounding cities, need to be discussing that with their state leaders and with the Department of Transportation to see what options are there and whether they're feasible and something that through a partnership effort we can make a reality.
Well, we have a lot of frustrated people online. One of our live chat questions tonight is folks are looking for solutions right now, and one of the questions was why not make the toll roads free during the rush hour?
Well, that's a nice concept, I suppose, but I'm not sure the people who lent us the money would appreciate that. Austin is when you look at Austin, in all honesty, it's a very peak-oriented town. It is traffic and congestion is focused on the morning rush hours and the evening rush hours, the afternoon rush hours. They're expanding, but that's where our focus is, and that's how we prove what we can build and pay off. We have to provide that revenue back to the investors, or we would never fund another project.
Well, in defense of Mike, you can't just make it free at rush hour. You're going to pay for it some way. These roads have to be paid for. They've been built. They've been bonded out, as was explained. So even if we made 130 free 24 hours a day, we still owe the debt. And so somehow, some way, we've got to come up with that financing to pay that debt.
I might also add in response to that person's question that the second you make something like that free and open it up, then it fills up with traffic, and you basically eliminate the solution that you thought you had. It's just induced demand, and that's a very well-known aspect of transportation facilities. So if you expand capacity, or if you make something like a toll road free, it fills up, and then it's congested, and you don't get the benefits you were hoping for.
Well, the City of Austin, you mentioned, I think, John, earlier, has a study ongoing about I-35 right now, and some of the things that come out of that may show up on the bond election next year. When will we know, when will voters know what we're going to see on that?
Well, we're working on that right now. We start the transit working group next Friday, I believe, is their first scheduled reconstituting that group to talk about mobility in transit. And then, of course, our staff is working on the study with the consultant that's been hired. Obviously we want to get this out sometime in the spring, early enough to have this full community conversation. So I was glad to hear you guys before the show started saying that we might revisit this town hall meeting sometime in the spring, because I think that's when we're really going to have to ramp up and put this package together to be able to explain it to the voters and to explain to them how we're going to pay for it.